Tonight, a Texas state official creates a dress code controversy.
We don't want a man come dressed in drag or vice versa.
Why some are calling a new policy from the state agriculture commissioner an attack on transgender Texans. Plus,
the House is a rough and rowdy place.
The battle over border security.
That we're doing the work that we're sent here to do to secure the border.
We talked to the two Texas Republican lawmakers at the center of the fight. And later, keeping a closer eye on kids' social media accounts. How a bill moving through the Texas legislature would allow parents to approve what social media sites their children can access. Capitol Tonight starts right now. Thanks for joining us here on Capitol Tonight. I'm Karina Kling. A dress code directive from a Texas agency is making national headlines. The Texas Department of Agriculture ordered its employees to wear clothes consistent with their biological gender. Commissioner Sid Miller sent the new policy to his staff earlier this month, saying employees will be sent home and required to change clothes if they violate the dress code. Miller addressed the directive on Spectrum News this morning, saying he's focused on professionalism.
You don't want a man come dressed in drag or vice versa. You know, it's very disruptive. It's not professional. I have a lot of foreign dignitaries come in my office. We do international trade. I have state elected officials coming in. You know, my people need to look and act professional.
But an attorney with the ACLU of Texas says this dress code violates the law.
Again, unclear and likely unconstitutional. It's not the role of the government or any employer to question what someone's biology or anatomy is. That would be a gross invasion of privacy. And every person should be allowed to dress professionally, but they can't be forced to conform to gender stereotypes.
The policy comes as LGBTQ advocates fight a number of hostile bills state lawmakers are advancing that includes restricting gender-affirming care for transgender minors. Commissioner Miller's been a vocal proponent of that legislation. Meanwhile, two key education bills passed the Texas House today. Both would raise teacher pay, but they have different approaches on how to do it. Our Charlotte Scott reports on why one educator says neither bill gets the job done.
Andrea Bell has been a special education teacher for 4 years. Many of her students are autistic, and sometimes they accidentally hurt her.
I absolutely love what I do, regardless of my hair getting pulled out or the bruises on my arms and legs from them hitting and pinching. They don't know what they're doing all the time. They don't understand.
She doesn't believe lawmakers are doing enough to help educators when it comes to increasing pay. Panhandle Republican Ken King's bill says teacher pay raises would vary by district. One teacher group, Texas AFT, predicts no teacher will get more than $80 extra each month. That's less than $1,000 per year.
That is absolutely not enough for teachers. That won't even cover what we have to buy for our classes for the month.
Bell spends her own money on school supplies for her classroom, so she doesn't believe this raise would make a difference for her family.
I'm always for more teacher pay. There are other things that need funded too.
Members of the Texas House debated Representative King's bill on Wednesday.
Move the adoption.
Some making the argument that the salary increase for educators is far too low.
Is that adequate for public education? Surely not.
So this is not an issue of money. This is an issue of will.
Another bill by Houston Democrat Harold Dutton also passed the House.
They want to improve public education.
His would increase teacher salaries based on qualifications. Pay bumps could range from $3,000 to $36,000 depending on skill level. Bell doesn't think that approach is right either, despite having several certifications herself.
I don't think being paid on your qualification, like my certifications, would make me better than one that's been there for 13 or 14 years.
Teachers have requested a $10,000 salary increase for all educators, but that's unlikely. The Senate's proposal would bump up pay by $2,000. While Bell says a substantial pay increase is important to her, she'll still do the job for her students no matter what happens.
We have very frustrating days, but we come back because we love what we do.
For Capitol Tonight, I'm Charlotte Scott.
Silent panic alert buttons could soon be in every public school classroom in Texas. The proposal is one of the latest efforts to beef up school safety in the wake of the Uvalde school shooting last May. The House passed a bill this week that would require districts to use part of their school safety budget to install the buttons. Once pressed, law enforcement would immediately be alerted. The bill is one of a number of school safety measures the House approved. Another would require hiring at least one armed security officer at every campus. With us now is the author of the Panic Alert Button Bill, Democratic Representative Sean Theory of Houston. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in. I know that this passed with pretty overwhelming support. How would these buttons work? How would districts make sure that they're installed and be able to activate them very quickly?
Well, first of all, the good news is 86% of all of school districts have already applied for the grant funding for this silent panic alert technology. So we can check that box that it is funded. The next thing is we're really not being overly prescriptive. TEA has prescribed certain guidelines that the software must do. For example, it must be able to communicate instantly in real time with law enforcement and first responders, but we are leaving it up to the local districts to determine what kind of program they want to use, so long as it meets the minimum specifications. So it might be, some schools may wear a placard, a teacher can wear a badge and instantly touch it one time. Okay. She can touch it 3 times if it's an active shooter situation. Some schools want to use software on an iPad or a phone. So there's a myriad of ways it can be implemented, and so we just thought it was best to leave it up to the local districts. However, as I said, it must be able to instantly track where the situation is.
Well, and is this a direct response to the police radio failures at Robb Elementary in Uvalde? I mean, what if the school had these kind of buttons in place?
Absolutely. We all heard these horror stories and of footage of children crawling under their desk using their own cell phones, trying to call 911 repeatedly. So the great thing about this technology is it can actually provide a location of what's happening. We heard Uvalde law enforcement saying they didn't know the kids were still alive. That was unacceptable. And with this type of software, that they wouldn't be able to say that because they're instantly communicating with them. It can actually, if there's an incident on a football field, that they will know where the active threat is.
We mentioned another part of the school safety package, the armed guards at every campus. Lawmakers also pushing to up active shooter plans at schools. I mean, do you support the majority of these school safety measures moving forward?
You know, I've evolved on this issue so much because I've accepted, as a mom of a child in public school, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and every day I live with the real fear when I drop my child off that other parents have, which is that our kids may not return home to us. So I don't believe there's going to be a one-stop solution. So we have to pretty much be creative. I would love to ban assault weapons, but that bill is not before the Texas House right now. I will say, with respect to hardening our schools, we do have to accept the fact that our schools are our least secure government-owned building in Texas. Right now, every day, I have more protection in the Capitol building than my child does back home, and that should not be the case. They're our least secure building, yet they house our most vulnerable population. So we've got to do something.
We just have about a minute left, but I know, I mean, speaking to that, we've talked to parents and people that are concerned about schools looking like prisons. I mean, where do you find the balance? And is that just the world we live in?
Well, we've already had over 100 school shootings this year around the nation. So we have to realize that this problem isn't going away and it hasn't been solved. I think that we can still have beautiful environments for our children to grow, learn, and thrive, but they absolutely have to be protected. We walk in airports every day with metal detectors. Right. We go to stadiums with metal detectors, and children don't think a thing about it. We have to face the real fact that they are a vulnerable target, and I believe it's one of the reasons these people target schools is that they know that they're unprotected. And so while I would love to raise the age on guns and other things, right now in the state of Texas, we've got to do something and not nothing. And I believe we're on the way.
Priorities for both chambers. I know that these bills are moving quickly.
Absolutely.
Representative Sean Theory, thank you so much for stopping by the studio.
Thank you for having me.
The Texas Senate gave final approval to a bill that limits the sale of Texas farmland to citizens and entities associated with China and several other countries. After heavy pushback leading to major edits, the measure passed on a mostly party line vote. The bill was watered down after months of outcry from Asian American groups and others who said it would make it impossible for dual citizens and other immigrants to buy homes or start businesses. The bill's author says it's about protecting national security. It now moves to the Texas House. In Washington, House Republicans are trying to overcome internal divisions to pass sweeping border security legislation. The final package aims to incorporate separate proposals by two Texas Republicans who had been at odds over what to do at the border. Democrats say the final bill would restrict legal immigration. Our Washington reporter Rena Diamante has more.
For some Texas lawmakers, addressing the issues along the southern border isn't just about fulfilling campaign promises.
A district like mine, which is 42% of the southern border, this was always about finding real, tangible things that would help my district. Labeling cartels as terrorists, that helps our district get to the root of it. Giving more resources to sheriffs and Border Patrol agents, getting a pay raise.
Congressman Tony Gonzalez sits on the House Homeland Security Committee, which on Wednesday took up legislation to resume construction of the border wall, bolster the Border Patrol, and upgrade the technology the patrol uses. This, a week after Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee passed legislation to tighten asylum eligibility, impose new requirements for verifying employment, and increase penalties for immigration violations.
We were specifically dealing with the policy changes, making sure we're not releasing people, that we're tightening down on asylum, that we're making sure we're keeping families united while we adjudicate their claims.
Congressman Chip Roy and Gonzalez represent neighboring districts, but they disagreed over how to treat migrants seeking asylum, with Roy favoring a more restrictive approach. The dispute derailed hopes for the chamber to quickly pass a border package. The work now is deciding how to merge these two bills together.
I worked really hard to take some of the pieces out that I thought would limit legal immigration.
What I'm not going to support is funding more Border Patrol agents to process people rather than do their job of patrolling the border.
Democrats slammed both approaches.
When you open up a legal pathway, people want to use legal pathways. What they are trying to do is not just shut down any and all pathways. They're also trying to take away funding that helps communities like mine.
This debate comes as Title 42, the public health order that uses the pandemic as justification to turn away migrants at the border, is scheduled to end on May 11th. Congressman Roy tells us he expects the House to vote on a border security bill the week it expires. In Washington, Rena Diamante, Capitol Tonight.
And still to come, bringing care to campus, how state lawmakers are trying to help more students access mental health care. Welcome back. Let's get a check now of some of the other political stories making headlines across the state. The Texas Senate advanced a proposal that would start the process of building an anti-abortion statue on the Capitol grounds. It would be a replica of a sculpture in Rome called the Life Monument, depicting a mother with a fetus in her womb. The legislation itself would not start construction, but it gives the State Preservation Board permission to begin accepting plans and private fundraising. West Texas A&M University faculty condemned the school's president for canceling a charity campus drag show. Faculty overwhelmingly passed a vote of no confidence for the university president, Walter Wendler. The vote is non-binding and largely symbolic, but they said it serves to send a message to other university leaders. And Texas schools could soon be allowed to partner with local mental health authorities to provide care for students on campus. Under a bill passed by the State House, districts would also get to register as a provider under Medicaid and get reimbursements for students who receive Medicaid and benefit from mental health care. Texas kids would need parental consent to create social media accounts under a bill advancing at the state capitol. It would require digital service providers to get approval from parents before entering into an agreement with minors younger than 18. The bill would also let parents request access to any data on social media associated with the minor. Opponents include Facebook parent Meta. Representatives testified against the bill, saying it could bring unintended consequences that could undermine safeguards already put in place. Joining us now is the author of the bill, Republican Representative Shelby Slauson of Stephenville. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
This is a priority of the Speaker, also being introduced in Congress today on a national level. I mean, why do you think this is necessary? What exactly would this do?
This is a big deal. This is definitely a priority in our chamber because what we've seen increasingly in recent years is that overexposure to digital platforms is causing harms among our kids. We see increased rates of self-harm, suicide. We had testimony in the Capitol about the access that children have to drugs and other harmful substances. And parents are demanding that these platforms do better to protect our kids and to allow them to help keep our kids safer in that online environment and help raise responsible digital citizens.
How would it work? How would social media companies get consent from parents? I mean, what would the process look like?
So that's a great question. And fortunately, there are already some models out there at the federal level for kids who are under 13 who are already required to have that verified parental consent in order to participate in different online environments. So there are steps that parents can take to prove that they are the parent of that child. Okay. And to give consent for the child to participate in that forum.
I know that Meta, as mentioned, testified against this and said that it's established more than 30 tools for teens and families, including around age verification and limiting time spent on Instagram. I mean, why, as they would say, why is that not enough?
Well, we see it's not enough because we see the effects of what's happening with our children. And some of the testimony, some of the most powerful stories are things like a child who died here in Texas just in this last year after seeing one of these blackout challenges and trying to replicate that. And in committee, we heard testimony about another child from Texas who died from that same challenge 10 years ago. No. So in that decade, not enough has been done to protect our kids from those things.
What about this, concerns that this could be a temporary solution to a bigger problem? I mean, what other steps do you think need to be taken in terms of, is this just a first step to kind of what you're pushing even?
Well, I think it is a first step to get parents back engaged in a way that can help them protect their kids online. This isn't unique to Texas. This is happening all over the country. Different states are grappling with this issue and how best to create a better environment and to hold these companies to account. And as you mentioned, even the federal government is trying to figure out what's a better solution.
Yeah, and I know that it's had bipartisan support. I mean, this got overwhelming support in the House, as mentioned, now moves to the Senate. What have you heard in terms of what lawmakers are looking to do with this there?
We do expect that it'll be picked up over there very quickly and hope to see it move with the same strong support from both sides of the aisle. This is not a partisan issue by any stretch. It's definitely a bipartisan.
You talked a little bit about this, but what have you heard from parents in the testimony, but just also the push for this legislation?
Desperation for help. Even parents who are doing the best that they can and using different apps out there to try and monitor their kids, there's still things that are getting through. So they want to be better engaged. We want to protect our kids, and we just need more avenues to do that.
What else are you pushing at the legislature that you've kind of taken the lead on this session? I know that you've looked at some of the bills that have been pushed by the Speaker or have been the lead on some of those bills.
We have a whole variety of issues, right? Some of the personal issues relative to stakeholders back home are increasing criminal penalties for victims of different types of crime there. Other things to protect minors from instances where an adult may have provided them alcohol and then that's led to serious bodily injury or death. So there are several things along those lines.
Representative Shelby Slauson, we'll have to leave it there. We'll get you back on. Thank you so much. I know we'll continue to watch this bill as it moves forward as well. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Still to come on Capitol tonight, a Texas woman denied an emergency abortion speaks out on Capitol Hill, what she told her Texas senators. In Washington today, an Austin woman denied an abortion blasted her Texas senators. The Senate Judiciary Committee heard testimony on the fallout from last year's Supreme Court decision that overturned the right to an abortion.
I wanted to address my senators, Cruz and Cornyn. I would like for them to know that what happened to me, I think most people in this room would agree, was horrific. But it's a direct result of the policies that they support. I nearly died on their watch.
Amanda Zarowski developed a life-threatening infection when doctors delayed an abortion even though the fetus was not expected to survive. She and 4 other women sued the state seeking clarity on when doctors can legally perform the procedure. Cruz and Cornyn had no direct role in the state-level ban adopted by the legislature, but they have long supported curbs on abortion access. House Republicans narrowly approved a bill that would require trillions of dollars in spending cuts in order to raise the nation's borrowing limit. Our Cassie Simeon reports from Washington.
House passage of the debt and budget bill was a victory for Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who had to convince several reluctant Republicans to go along with the measure over days of negotiations.
The bill is passed.
The House approved the legislation on a vote of 217 to 215. 4 Republicans joined with Democrats in voting no. Just one more Republican defection would have doomed the bill, but Speaker McCarthy prevailed, surviving a major test of his leadership. Democrats argued the bill's mandatory spending cuts would hurt middle-class families by cutting Head Start funding, benefits for veterans, and a host of other vital programs. The bill also would expand work requirements for Medicaid and nutrition assistance known as food stamps.
You want to jam your reckless, extreme ideology down the throats of the American people.
President Joe Biden was asked about McCarthy's plan and whether he would meet with the House Speaker if the House passed the legislation.
Happy to meet with McCarthy, but not on whether or not the debt limit gets extended. That's not negotiable.
The president can no longer ignore by not negotiating.
The bill now heads to the Senate, but with Democrats in the majority, it will be rejected. Backing Biden's stance, the debt ceiling should be raised with no strings attached, as it's been done before. If the borrowing limit is not raised, the government will be unable to pay all of its bills, possibly as soon as June, potentially cratering the economy. In Washington, Cassie Simeon, Spectrum News.
And that is all the time that we have tonight. We're back again tomorrow with the latest in Texas politics. Until then, thanks for watching. Have a great night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more refreshing stories about your community, click the subscribe button over here. You can also download our Spectrum News app and tune in to Channel 55 on Dish and DirecTV to get live news coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.